Welcome back to another update on the Bitcoin chart, Bitcoin USD. I said last week that I was going to have a special look at the weekly close this time, and so I'm doing a follow-up on that, how it turned out. So we're starting here on the weekly chart, and I am going to say that we had a bearish close last week, and now it depends on how price will keep on moving here from this point of view. But as we see, price closed inside the cloud, and that turns the weekly trend into neutral using this Ichimoku system. So you see price closed inside the cloud, and we now have a situation which we haven't had for quite some time, that we are trading inside the cloud. So you can see here also that there is a little sharp dip here in the upper band of the cloud. This will be important for the nitty-gritty details here on the next weekly close, and how that will pan out and what implications that will have. So I decided to take this into proper steps here, so I will look at different scenarios, and in doing so you can yourself monitor the weekly closes and see where we could be going using this type of analysis. So if we start with the close here next week coming up, it's this little candle here. You can see it's just barely moving from the opening. So you can see it was up here and tested the green line, the upper cloud, but didn't feel like breaking out. You can see this upper band of the cloud is currently at 42,300 approximately. So that's where the edge of this cloud is, and that's what price has to breach to sort of gain momentum the other way up in the bullish territory. So if we look at next week, this week, I have to say, this week's close on Sunday, if it closes above the cloud, let's say above 42,300, let's say, which means that it will open above the cloud one step out, and you have a little bit more room down to the upper cloud the week after, which would be 40,965. So it has a little bit room down. So if this happens, it's probably likely we will see a retest of this cloud, as I said, 40,000, 41,000 approximately. So that's one scenario. And if next week, the week after, if we have a bullish close and then we have another bullish close after testing this cloud here, we close somewhere above, I'd say that is bullish, and that we are likely to see a bounce from there going forward. So we have the next resistance up at 47k, so 45k, yeah, approximately, but we're probably looking at 47,849. That's the range, I would say, from this level up to the pivot point here, this new yearly pivot point. So as long as we trade, I have to, if I'm making a pause here and just making a general reflection on using the pivots on the higher time frames, which in this case is the pivot point for the yearly time frame, I would say as long as we trade below the yearly pivot point, that is 47,800 approximately, we are and we're trading above the S1, we are in a bearish sort of sentiment, in a sort of a retracement, bearish sentiment type of situation. So price needs to breach that and hold close above the yearly pivot point. and that will probably accelerate a more positive momentum upward. So it's sort of a line in the sand for price in general for the whole year, I have to say. And of course we have the yearly S1, which is farther down here, which I hope we won't be visiting. It's 26,400. So it's very wide price gaps, these yearly pivot points. They are, but still they are important. They are a line in the sand, and you can see how close we came here. I mean, it's very common that the yearly pivot point is tested early in the year, especially if we are sort of in a not bullish but more of a retracement type of situation. So that's what we're seeing here, and now we're seeing price come down into the cloud. So we discussed the first scenario, a close above this week and then a close above next week, which will probably or likely lead to a bounce and moving more confident for the bulls, and the bears will sort of retract and price will come up. So if we have a bullish close this week, and then the next week we will actually close inside of the cloud again, I'd say that will be short-term bearish, and we are likely to see a move down towards the lower end of the cloud, which is approximately 37,500K. Sorry, 37,500, yeah. That is quite probable because we have a failure here of maintaining the bullish momentum, bullish trend, which we broke above, and then we failed. So that will be a reasonable scenario for the following week, so to speak. So then if we have a neutral close this week, let's say right here where we are, that would mean that we open next week in the bullish territory. It's a side step breakout. They are of course not as strong and convincing as a regular breakout where price push above, close above. This is a side step breakout, but sometimes they actually becomes real breakouts, so I have to be alert about that. So that's why I have to look at the next week, the coming week. So let's say we close at this level at the end of the week, below the cloud, but still above this 41, we'll say 41,000, let's say, at the upper end of the cloud. So we will have a bullish opening next week, and then next week we will close inside the cloud again. We will have another neutral close. That will always also act as a way on price, basically, and push price lower, probably. Otherwise we'll have some sort of crawling situation here, but then, well, it will drop further away here, I would say. So it will also have a bearish bias in that scenario. Of course, just closing this week below 41, somewhere towards the end of this week, last week's low week, and then we will open in neutral territory and close in neutral territory, preferably below this wick. It will also weigh on price even more so than the previous scenario. So we have these bearish scenarios, I mean, weighing here over. There are more bearish scenarios than bullish scenarios in this situation. Yeah, so as you can see, it's a little bit tricky here because we have this situation with a sharp edge here of the cloud reflecting price action over here. I would say it's an interesting situation because it's a little bit new situation. As we are inside the cloud, we have a close inside the cloud on the weekly time frame. It's a sort of a big event. That's why I'm also making these videos, because it could actually either be a trap or actually work as a further fuel for downside. So it's important to keep an eye on that. Then we have some general indicators, I would say, that we need to address here in this situation, and that would be good to move up to the daily time frame. So in the last video I noticed, and I also talked about, the fact that we have this potential bullish divergence here. It's already, I would say, quite significant, because we have a big drop, but you can see MACD doesn't move very much down, so we're lacking momentum basically. That's what it's showing us. You can already see it's starting to level out the blue line here, which is the signal line on the MACD. So depending on what price will do here, it will also affect whether we will have a cross here on MACD, which will be important, because then we have definitive bullish divergence in place, and it would probably spur, give confidence for bull to go in, step in, buy, put a close below here somewhere, and then just ride the wave up. I think it would be a momentum that is similar to what we had before here, which I talked about in my previous video also. So then we should also address here the SMA 200, because we can see it's moving upwards. There's a bullish momentum in the SMA 200, reflecting all the price action going back 200 periods here, 200 days. So, and this is very important. I mean we were way oversold here comparison to the slope of the SMA 200, and for that reason only, it's quite logical and also actually likely that we will see a bounce to sort of, because this acts like a gravity, this line, especially if it's moving upwards. So I would, from a technical perspective, and all my experience doing this charting, which is now of course going back to 2005 when I more actively started it, working with charts. Back then I was of course in the forex market, but later on I also started to analyze the crypto market. So I would say this is a quite particular situation on the daily time frame, because we have this situation with the upward sloping SMA 200 and then this oversold situation, and it's likely that price would bounce from here, I would say, at least to this previous support level here, 45,000 basically. That's another thing you have to add to the previous analysis of the cloud closes on the weekly time frame, which is sort of an analyze in itself, where you have to add things like this. With my metrics I use MACD, I use pivots, I use the Ichimoku cloud, and I use the SMA 200, and of course also trend lines in between and support resistance levels, but you always use that on chart type of analysis. So if you make the whole picture, that's where you will end up in your analysis. And so this is one thing you have to think about, the slope of the SMA 200 on a daily time frame, and where is price in comparison to that. This is also sort of reflected in the MACDs, how it looks, because it's pulled up sort of by the previous bullish momentum, and that's why we have also this situation with a lack of momentum downwards in the MACD. So also a few things going back to the weekly time frame before I wrap this up. Try to keep the videos shorter. They tend to be too long, but I will try to make them shorter. So going forward here a few weeks, we will have to keep an eye on the cloud, whether we will have a bearish twist here. That will also be a very significant event for the Ichimoku system, and Bitcoin. We'll have to keep an eye on that because that might weigh on price too. And yeah, that's also one thing. And another thing, when you're looking at the cloud, you should also keep an eye on is the red line here. You see in the bull trend, or even in a retracement in a bull trend, it keeps going up or sideways. So that's what the lower band does. It's slower to price action movement, and it's more resilient. But if we get a downtick here on the weekly time frame, it will also be a first sign that of weakness, and could be an early sign that we are going deeper, much deeper then. So another thing to keep an eye on. Yeah. So that's my short take on the situation. I hope I can make another weekly video after this week's close, so we can get an update on this. I think this format could be useful for traders who aren't jumping in and out all the time, but have a little bit longer perspective on price, and thinking about how they will move around their assets in the crypto class. Yeah. So thanks for watching.